All right, guys, welcome back for another insightful analysis from Watch It Philly. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the real cause of inflation and my theory on the mechanism of how it happened. First, some background on the high prices we see in the economy. I could provide statistics on inflation, but most people believe the government downplays it statistically to keep Social Security payments lower. Instead, I'm going to go with anecdotal evidence of how high it is. I know this approach is going to infuriate university economists and conservatives, which is why I'm happy to present it this way. My theory is the price of essentials is basically double what they should be considering income. That's based on numerous casual conversations with working class Americans. Conservative economic theory would take into account the declining price of consumer goods such as televisions and clothing. I'm going to totally disregard small consumer goods for several reasons. For one, a television is a non-essential item. You can't live in it, drive in it, or eat it. I really don't care what they cost, and most consumers don't either. Secondly, big hedge fund investors don't flock to invest in non-essential items because it can't be held over the head of the working class. Third, I won't include non-essential items like TVs because I know it will infuriate conservative economists to not include it. My theory is that prices are double what they should be. Rent has doubled while income has not. The price of cars has doubled while income has not. The question is, what caused it? Conservative theories will always start with wage price spiral as the cause, because the working class always needs to be blamed in order to deflect and obfuscate bad policy decisions by the government. They want to blame the guy who got a dollar raise to $15 an hour after his rent doubled. These raises are pennies compared to price increases. It's pennies. Wages in this country are an absolute joke, but I digress. Guys, it's not a wage price spiral that's causing the problem. It has nothing to do with wages. In fact, wages continue to lag behind price increases, as almost anyone who pays rent or buys a car can attest. The real culprit is the Federal Reserve Bank keeping interest rates way too low for way too long, and how that reverberated through the economy, which is a process I'm going to explain here. First, I want to explain the phenomenon of an investor frenzy. When people start to believe there is easy money to be made, they flock to an investment, a process that feeds on itself in a feedback loop that causes a bubble. A good example is progressive jackpot lotteries. The jackpot can start at $10 million and slowly rise over a period of a week or two to $20 million. Then it doubles in 3 to 4 days. Then it rolls again and an investor frenzy kicks in. Suddenly it hits $100 million. News stations report on the jackpot and show lines of people waiting to buy a ticket. Within just 24 hours, an additional $100 million flows in and the jackpot suddenly becomes $200 million. Then somebody hits it because so many tickets were sold, and then the jackpot bottoms to the lowest entry level and usually stays there for a while. That's how an investor frenzy works, except it's with investments, in this case, real estate. It's caused by the lure of easy money and chasing that bubble as it goes parabolic. In the case of real estate, as in the lottery, the influx of cash was slow at first. Some people got in early when rates were low, and they realized their money was going nowhere in savings accounts, which paid basically nothing. The government was clearly encouraging investment to stimulate the economy. As more people realized they had access to highly leveraged investment at very low interest rates, prices began to rise. No other investment could rival real estate as far as leverage, with a very low risk of failure. The only other type of investment offering that kind of leverage would be the futures market, but that would be extremely risky. Investors continued to pile on. Prices continued to increase and the feedback loop started. People who got in early, who used to be burger flippers, became wealthy house flippers. Hedge funds poured even more money into the real estate market, driving prices to levels that had no relation whatsoever to wages. The average wage earner lucky to make $20 to $25 an hour was being asked to pay $350,000 on average for a basic suburban house. The purpose of a house, which is a place to live, was totally disregarded by investors whose only goal was to use it as a casino. If you were a first-time home buyer, you were totally screwed. An entire generation was locked out of the housing market. The government knew this wasn't right, but they did nothing to stop it. In fact, they encouraged it. They intentionally pumped money into the economy via the housing market at the expense of the working class. A house became a casino chip for hedge funds and flippers. Its purpose was disregarded, and the human toll was simply ignored. The so-called housing shortage is a market aberration caused by hedge funds using housing as a casino chip. Numerous studies have shown the ratio of housing to population did not change. The whole thing is an investor-gambler frenzy, not materially different from the lottery fever I described earlier. I really think most real estate agents would be dumbfounded by someone interested in a house as a place to live rather than as a way to make their first million. And even if they were to believe the housing shortage is real, it's still nuts because the United States is a really big country with millions of acres of forest land. Are we supposed to seriously believe that wood can't be chopped down to build houses like it always has been? I'm sure any number of struggling working class Americans would be happy to find good paying construction jobs building and living in houses that could be built for their own benefit. Modern day Levittowns need to be built by and for the working class rather than McMansions. If Mr. Levitt could do it in 1951, why can't it be done now? Anyway, the result of the real estate investor frenzy was the lockout of first-time buyers who were forced to be renters, sometimes of the same properties they wanted to buy. Here's where inflation comes in, not as much with residential rents, but commercial rents. Real estate prices and rents also increased massively for small businesses. In my hometown, shop rents for small storefronts increased to $2,000 a month. In residential real estate, landlords have a fun time with this type of increase because their tenants are forced to either go out and get a second job, get additional roommates, or else be homeless. It's a different process with commercial storefronts. Shop owners can't realistically work a second job, and they can't get roommates because it's not a living space, so their only option is to either increase prices of their goods and services or close the business altogether. If a coffee shop has its rent suddenly increased by $1,000 a month, they simply increase their prices to accommodate the difference. Consequently, you can see sudden huge increases in prices of goods and services, in this case coffee and restaurant meals. If consumers rebel against the price increases and refuse to pay it, there's a surge in small business closures. Another factor in inflation coming off the real estate frenzy is caused when people sell inflated assets, in this case houses. If someone has a second home, usually that they bought cheap years ago or inherited, they can sell it for an enormous profit. A second home selling at the national average of $350,000 puts that much cash in a seller's pockets, less taxes. Huge numbers of people quietly experience this type of windfall due to having so much cash flowing into the real estate market. For perspective, many smaller lottery jackpot games don't have jackpots this big. It's like tens of thousands of people suddenly winning a moderately sized lottery jackpot. What do they do with the money? They spend it, which drives prices of goods and services nowhere but up. The windfall did not come from wages, which proves my point once again that inflation is not the result of a wage price spiral. It's a result of Federal Reserve policy of low rates that encouraged an investor frenzy in real estate for it to be used as a casino rather than a place to live.